For today's reading lesson, we are taking a look at main idea and details, supporting details again. So we know that the main idea is the most important thing from the text. It's what the text is mostly about. And the supporting details are the examples or the details that support that main idea. So you should be able to relate all of the details back to the main idea. So I asked you yesterday to think about what you thought the main idea of our nonfiction read, Can Kids Change the World, was, and to maybe think of some details from it. So we're going to read this story again. If you would like to read along in your Storyworks magazine or reread it when we're finished, it starts on page 6 in your new Storyworks magazine. So can kids change the world? Long ago, some brave kids tried to make their community better. Did it work? So, as you read, I want you to think about a problem in Ayana's community and how did she help make it better? It all started with a trip. The year was 1958. A little girl named Ayana Najuma was 7 years old. She and 19 other kids went on a trip far from their home in Oklahoma. They went up north to New York City. In New York, the kids noticed something. White people and African American people could use the same water fountain. They could eat in the same restaurant. They could even sleep next door to each other in hotels. That may not sound strange to you, but it was strange to Ayana and her friends. They were African American kids from the South. At that time, the southern part of our country was segregated. That means that African American people and white people were kept apart. In Oklahoma City, where the kids lived, water fountains had signs that said whites only. African American kids and white kids couldn't go to school together, and they couldn't eat in the same restaurants. The kids were amazed at how different New York City was from the South. When they got back to Oklahoma, they said, "Why do we have to live this way?" They knew the way their community was set up was wrong. White people had more rights than African American people. The kids made a plan to fix things, but would it work? The kids decided to get the restaurants to change so that African American people were allowed to eat in them. It could be dangerous to try to do that. Many people would be angry, but the kids were brave. They planned to sit in. At a sit in, you sit in a restaurant and ask to be served. You don't leave until you are served. It's a peaceful way to change something that is unfair. The kids went into training with a group of African American adults. In training, these adults taught the kids about nonviolence. They taught them about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Many people didn't want African American people to eat in a whites only restaurant. The kids learned that people would be unkind. The kids learned that they had to stay calm and be peaceful no matter how badly others behaved. In training, the adults yelled at the kids. They threw water on them. The kids practiced being calm and not yelling back. Soon, they were ready to do their first sit in. The kids' first sit in was at the Cat's lunch counter. It was a whites only restaurant. Ayana went with about 12 other kids. They all wore their best clothes. They went in and sat down, and they were polite. Ayana asked for a hamburger and a Coke. The waitress said no. The other customers were angry. They didn't like that African American kids were trying to change the restaurant. They did not want to be integrated so that everyone was allowed to eat there. The other customers yelled at the kids. They poured ketchup and coffee on them. Ayana says, "I wasn't scared. I knew I was doing the right thing." The kids didn't yell, they didn't fight, they sat quietly and talked with each other. They had brought magazines and coloring books. At the end of the day, the restaurant closed. The kids had to go. The next day, they went back. They ordered food again. No one gave it to them, but they were not going to give up. They were determined. On the third day, the kids ordered food. This time, the waitress brought it to them. From that day on, the cat's lunch counter was integrated. Anyone could eat there. The kids were so happy they had made one place in their community better. Ayana had learned something. She says, I was little, but my voice was as important as everyone else's voice. But their work wasn't done, so many restaurants in their community were segregated. Over the next 6 years, the kids did sit ins at many restaurants. More and more kids joined each time. The restaurant owners got pretty clever about trying to keep the kids away. At one point, restaurant workers took away all the chairs. There was no place to sit. But would that stop the kids? No. Ayana's little sister, Lena, had the right idea. When she didn't have a chair to sit on, she just leaned on the table. In most places, people wouldn't let the kids use the bathroom. That wasn't going to stop the kids either. One by one, the kids integrated the restaurants in their town. The kids had changed their city. One small group of kids had made their community better for everyone. They may have been little, but their voices were huge. Okay, so if we think about now, we can learn. We've talked before about the theme of a story. And the overall theme of this story is determination, is to never give up. So, but remember, that's not the same as the main idea. The main idea is what the story is mainly about. This story, remember, we can use some of our text features to help us figure out the main idea. And this story is mainly about brave kids that tried to make their community better, or that did actually make their community better. So there are lots of details, lots of supporting details from this passage that we could use. It talks about the kids being amazed that New York was so different and that they didn't want to live the way that they did back home. It talked about them having a sit-in where they sit at the restaurants, and that they were trained on nonviolent ways to do a sit-in. It taught some more details are where it talks about their first sit-in being at Cat's lunch counter, and that the waitress would not serve them food, and people poured ketchup and coffee on them. And it talks about them coming back the next day and ordering food and no one giving it to them. And on the third day, they ordered food and the waitress brought it to them. And then it talks about some of the other places that they went and that they tried to end the segregation and integrate the restaurants, and some of the ways that the restaurants owners tried to keep them out. So there are lots of details in here that would support the main idea. And remember, the main idea would be some brave kids worked hard to make their community better. And so all of these little details about the things that the children did with the sit-ins and to integrate the restaurants in the South in 1958 are all supporting details that would support this main idea. Now, yesterday you guys had to do a sort where you had to choose two main ideas and sort the details, the sentences with the details to go under each of those main ideas. So today you are going to read a passage and you're going to find the main idea and some details that go along with that.